There is an object in the oldest scriptures that men feared more than any army, more than any plague, more than death itself. A box. Just a box of wood and gold. For 1,000 years, it sat at the center of a nation, and the people who owned it were more afraid of it than their enemies were. Priests approached it, trembling. Kings would not lay a hand on it. To carry it wrongly, to look inside it, to reach out and steady it, was to fall dead where you stood. It toppled the idol of an empire without a single hand laid on it. It brought down the walls of a fortified city without one blow of a sword. And it struck down the men who reached for it, one after another, as if the air around it were made of fire. So, what was really sealed inside a box that could do all of that? Why would the God of the whole earth choose to live in a chest that a few men could carry on their shoulders? And where, in the end, did the most powerful object in the ancient world go when it vanished from history without a trace? This is the story of the Ark of the Covenant, the object everyone feared. Begin with the thing itself, because almost everything people think they know about it is wrong. It was not large. The old measurements make it a chest about the length of a man's arm and a half, narrow enough that 4 men could carry it between them on 2 long poles. It was built of acacia wood, a hard desert timber, and then covered completely, inside and out, in pure gold, until not a single grain of the wood showed anywhere. On top of it lay a lid of solid gold they called the mercy seat, and rising straight out of that lid, hammered from the same single piece of gold, stood 2 winged figures called cherubim, facing each other, their wings stretched forward until they nearly touched, arching over the empty space above the lid. That empty space was the whole point. It was not a treasure chest. It was a throne, an empty throne, built for a king no human eye could see, who had said that he would come down and meet his people in the space between those 2 golden wings. Understand what that meant to the people who carried it. They believed, without the smallest doubt, that the God who made the sky and the sea had agreed to fix one single point of contact with the earth, and that the point was this box, not a mountain, not a temple of stone, a chest that a few men could lift. And a God like that, brought that close, was not safe. That is the part the modern imagination loses. They did not think of it as a holy relic to be admired behind glass. They thought of it as the most dangerous object in the world, because the same power that had drowned an entire civilization and split a sea now rested quietly in a box in the middle of their camp. But the danger was never really in the gold. It was in the human heart that came near it. From the first day it existed, one temptation followed the ark everywhere it went. The temptation to treat it as a thing that could be used, to reach out and handle the power of God as if it belonged to you, to carry heaven into your own battles and make it serve your own ends. That hunger to grasp the holy and own it is the real enemy in this story. It wears many faces across the centuries: corrupt priests, panicked soldiers, a foreign king, a good man with good intentions and an outstretched hand. And every single time it reached for the box answered in the same way. To understand why, you have to go back to the mountain where it was born. It began in fire and terror at the foot of a mountain in the desert of Sinai. A nation of former slaves had come up out of Egypt, out of 10 plagues and a sea that had stood up in 2 walls of water to let them pass. Now they were camped before a mountain, and the God who had rescued them came down onto it. The record says the mountain was wrapped in thick cloud and fire and smoke, that it shook, that there was thunder and the blast of a trumpet growing louder and louder. And the people, the whole nation of them, were terrified. They begged Moses to stand between them and God. "You speak to us," they said, "and we will listen. But do not let God speak to us directly, or we will die." They had tasted the raw presence of the holy, and now they wanted a mediator, a barrier, anything except that voice landing straight on their skin. So God gave them exactly what they were afraid they needed: a way for him to live among them without destroying them. A set of instructions handed to Moses on the mountain for a tent, and at the very heart of the tent for a box. The pattern was precise, given down to the smallest detail. The acacia wood, the gold inside and out, the mercy seat, the 2 cherubim with their wings, the rings of gold at the 4 corners, and the poles that must never be removed, so that no human hand would ever need to touch the ark itself in order to move it. A craftsman named Bezalel was chosen to build it, and the record says something strange about him. It says he was filled with the Spirit of God, with skill and knowledge and craftsmanship to do the work. The first man in the entire Bible said to be filled with the Spirit of God was not a prophet and not a king. He was an artist, and his task was to build the box. And when it was finished, they placed things inside it. First, the 2 flat tablets of stone, carved with the 10 commandments, the terms of the covenant between the nation and their God. Then, the old writings say, 2 more things were added over time: a golden jar holding a portion of manna, the strange bread that had fallen from the sky to feed them in the wilderness, and the wooden staff of Aaron the priest, a dead stick that had budded, blossomed and grown ripe almonds in a single night as a sign. 3 objects: the law that they kept breaking, the bread that had kept them alive, and a dead branch that had come back to life. The whole story of the nation sealed away in the dark inside a box of gold. From that day, the ark went at the head of the nation. When the cloud of God's presence lifted from above the tent, the ark set out, carried on its poles by the priests, and the people followed. When it stopped, they stopped. A pillar of cloud by day and fire by night stood over it. For 40 years in the wilderness, a box led an entire nation through the desert. And then the wilderness ended, and the ark came to the edge of a river, with a walled world waiting on the other side. The river was the Jordan, and it was in flood, running high and fast over every bank. The nation had no way across, so the priests carrying the ark were told to walk straight into the water first, ahead of everyone else. The moment their feet touched the edge of the flood, the record says the river stopped. The water coming down from upstream stood still and rose up in a heap, far away, and the riverbed went dry. The priests carried the ark to the middle of the empty channel and stood there, holding it, while an entire nation walked across the bottom of a river on dry ground. Only when the last person was over did they climb the far bank, and the river came crashing back down behind them. On the other side stood Jericho, a city of high walls shut up tight against them, and the battle plan they were given was not a battle plan at all. For 6 days they were to march around the city once, in silence, with the ark carried in the middle of the procession, and priests blowing ram's horns. On the 7th day, they were to march around it 7 times, and then at one long blast of the horns, the whole nation was to shout. And the walls of Jericho fell down flat, a fortified city, taken without a ladder, without a battering ram, without a single sword lifted against the walls, just a box carried in slow circles, and a shout. For years it went on like that. Wherever the ark went out before them, the nation could not be stopped. It became the center of everything, the sign that God Himself was marching at the head of His people. And slowly, dangerously, the people began to believe something that was not quite true. They began to believe that the box itself was the power, that as long as they held it, they could not lose. They forgot that the ark was only a throne, and that a throne is nothing at all without the king who sits upon it, and that forgetting was about to cost them everything. By now the nation had settled the land, and the ark rested in a town called Shiloh, in the care of an old priest named Eli and his 2 sons, Hophni and Phinehas. The record is blunt about the sons. It calls them worthless men who did not know the Lord. They stole the best of the sacrifices for themselves and treated the holy things with open contempt. The men placed in charge of the most sacred object on earth were corrupt to the bone. And in their day, war came again with the Philistines, a hard people of iron, and war along the coast. Israel marched out to meet them, and lost. 4,000 men fell in a single day. That night, the elders asked the question that doomed them. Why did the Lord let us lose today? And instead of the true answer, they reached for the box. Bring the ark to the camp, they said, and it will save us from our enemies. Hear what they were really saying. Not, let us turn back to God. Not, let us ask what we have done wrong. Just, bring the box. Drag it out to the front line like a weapon, like a lucky charm, and force the power to fight for us. Hophni and Phinehas carried it down into the camp. When the ark came into the camp, the whole nation gave a shout so loud that the ground shook, and the Philistines heard it and were afraid, because they had heard what this God had done in Egypt. But fear is not the same thing as defeat. The 2 armies met, and it was not a victory. It was the worst slaughter in the nation's memory. 30,000 men fell. Hophni and Phinehas were both killed. And the thing that had never happened, the thing no one believed could ever happen, happened. The Ark of God was captured and carried off in the hands of the enemy. When the news reached Shiloh, old Eli fell backward from his seat and died. His daughter-in-law, hearing that her husband was dead and the ark was taken, went into labor and died giving birth, and with her last breath she named the child Ichabod, which means the glory has departed. She was not weeping for her husband. She was weeping for the box. The enemy had the ark. To them it was the ultimate trophy, proof that their God was stronger than the God of Israel. They carried it in triumph into their city of Ashdod, into the temple of their god Dagon, and set it down before his statue like a prize of war. That was their first mistake. The next morning, they found the statue of Dagon fallen on its face on the ground before the ark. They stood it back up. The morning after that, Dagon lay face down again, and this time the head and both hands of the idol had broken off and were lying on the threshold. Only the trunk remained. The god of the empire, bowed and broken before the box of the people they had just beaten. Then it began among the people. A plague broke out in Ashdod, painful tumors, and a terror that spread through the whole city. They understood exactly what was happening. The God of Israel is heavy upon us and upon Dagon, they said. Send the box away from here. So they sent it to another city, to Gath. And the plague broke out in Gath, so they sent it on to Ekron, and the people of Ekron cried out in panic before it had even arrived. They have brought the ark here to kill us. For 7 months, the most powerful people on the coast passed the box from city to city like a curse. None of them could survive. and everywhere it went, it left tumors and death and dread behind it. Finally, their own priests and diviners told them the truth. You cannot keep it, and you cannot simply throw it away. Send it back where it came from, and do not dare send it back empty. So they built a new cart, and they took 2 milk cows that had never once been yoked, cows with young calves still penned up at home, and they hitched them to the cart and set the ark on it, with a chest of gold beside it, golden models of the tumors and the mice that had ruined their land. Then they let the cows loose, with no driver at all. And they watched. Every instinct in those animals should have turned them straight back toward their calves. Instead, the 2 cows walked steadily up the road toward Israel, lowing as they went, never turning aside to the right or the left, as if something unseen were leading them. The lords of the Philistines followed behind all the way to the border, and then stopped and stood watching their great trophy walk out of their land entirely on its own. The ark came back into Israel at a town called Beth-shemesh, and the people there were overjoyed. They had their box back, and in their joy, some of them did the one thing that no one was ever permitted to do. They lifted the lid, and they looked inside. The record says God struck them down for looking into the ark. A great many men of that town died in a moment, simply for opening the box and staring at what they assumed they had every right to see. And the survivors asked the question that sits at the very center of this whole story: who is able to stand before the Lord, this holy God? They had their answer, and it terrified them. They did not want the box anymore. They sent messengers to another town, to Kiriath-Jearim, and begged them to come and take it away. And there, in a private house on a hill, the Ark of the Covenant was set down and left, and it stayed there, in the quiet, for 20 long years, while the nation almost managed to forget it. Before the hand reaches out, one thing. If this is the kind of story you were never told in church, subscribe. There is a new biblical film on this channel every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Now, back to the box on the hill, forgotten in a quiet house, waiting for a king who would decide that it was finally time to bring it home. The king was David. He had united the nation and taken the stronghold of Jerusalem, and he wanted the Ark, the throne of God, at the very center of his new capital. It was a good desire. It was the right instinct, and the way he first went about it nearly killed him, and did kill a man he trusted. David gathered 30,000 men and went to bring the ark up in celebration. But he made a quiet, fatal mistake. He set the ark on a new cart, pulled by oxen. It seemed reasonable enough. It was even the exact method the Philistines had used to send it back, and that had worked for them. But it was never the way the ark was meant to travel. It was to be carried on its poles, on the shoulders of the Levites, precisely as it had been from the beginning, for the one reason that no one should ever have to touch it. David borrowed the enemy's method instead of obeying the one he had been given. The procession set out with music and dancing, and at the threshing floor of a man named Nachon, the oxen stumbled, and the ark tipped on the cart. A man named Uzzah, walking beside it, did the most natural thing in the entire world. He reached out his hand to steady the ark of God, to keep it from falling to the ground. And God struck him down beside it, and he died there, next to the cart, with his hand still outstretched. It seems monstrous the first time you hear it. The man was only trying to help. But look closer, and it is the whole story again, folded into a single gesture. Uzzah had grown up in the house where the ark had sat for 20 years. He was so used to it that he could reach out and grab it without a second thought, the way you would catch a falling piece of furniture. He treated the throne of God as an object he was free to put his hands on. And that, exactly that, was the thing the Ark had been striking men down for since the very beginning. David was furious, and then he was afraid. "How can the Ark of the Lord ever come to me now?" he said. He did not dare bring it one step further. He turned aside and left it at the house of a man named Obed-edom, and he went home badly shaken. And here the story turns, and turns hard, because for 3 months the Ark stayed in that man's house, and something entirely different happened. The record says the Lord blessed Obed-edom and his whole household, everything that he had, because of the Ark of God under his roof. Understand what that means. Held up right next to Uzzah lying dead in the road. The very same box, in the very same season, struck one man dead for grabbing it and poured blessing over another man's entire house for sheltering it. It was never the gold that decided which one you got. It was what you carried in your own heart when you came near it. When David heard that Obed-edom had been blessed, he finally understood. This time he did it right. The Levites carried the Ark up on their shoulders, on the poles, the way it had always been meant to be carried. And every 6 steps, the whole procession stopped, and they offered a sacrifice. And David, the king, took off his royal robes and put on a simple linen garment. And he danced. He danced in front of that box with everything in him, leaping and spinning down the road ahead of his entire kingdom, a king making himself look like a fool for sheer joy, because the throne of God was coming home at last. His own wife watched from a window and despised him for it. He did not care in the slightest. The Ark came into Jerusalem to the sound of horns and shouting, and David set it inside a tent he had prepared for it, and blessed the people, and gave bread to every single person in the crowd. The box was home. The nation had its heart back. The story looked finished. But that was not the end of it. David wanted to build a permanent house for the Ark, a temple of stone and cedar and gold. He was not allowed to. That work was given instead to his son, Solomon, and Solomon built the most magnificent temple the ancient world had ever seen. At the very heart of it, hidden behind a great woven veil, was a perfect cube of a room, plated entirely in gold, with no window and no light of any kind. It was called the Holy of Holies, and into that darkness they carried the Ark, and set it down beneath the outstretched wings of 2 enormous cherubim, and left it there. The door was shut, and it stayed shut. No one entered that room, ever, except one man, the high priest, one single day a year, and never without blood, and never without fear. Behind that veil, in total darkness, the box that had toppled Dagon and struck down the men of Beth-shemesh sat in silence at the center of the nation for centuries. When Solomon's temple was finished and the Ark was carried in, the record says a cloud filled the house so thickly that the priests could no longer stand up to do their work, because the glory of the Lord had filled the temple. The same presence that had led the nation through the desert had come to rest at last in the dark heart of a house of gold. And then, slowly, the Ark disappears from the story. For a while, it is simply there, assumed at the center of the temple. And then the nation rots in almost exactly the way the world had rotted before the flood. Kings turn to other gods. Some of them set idols up inside the temple itself. And the scriptures, which had followed the Ark city by city and step by step for centuries, simply stopped mentioning it. At some point, without a single verse to mark the moment, The most feared object in the world is no longer spoken of at all. Then came the end. An empire from the east, Babylon, under a king named Nebuchadnezzar, besieged Jerusalem, broke it open, and burned the temple to the ground. And the record of that day is strangely, almost deafeningly specific. The scribes listed everything the Babylonians carried off: the great pillars of bronze, the huge basin, the pots and the shovels, and the golden dishes, every sacred vessel, item by item, loaded up and hauled away to Babylon. It is a careful, complete inventory of the plunder of the temple. And the Ark of the Covenant is nowhere on the list. It is not listed as captured. It is not listed as destroyed. It is not listed as hidden. It is simply, completely absent. The single most important object in the nation's entire history, the throne of God on earth, vanishes from the record without one word of explanation. And from that day to this, no one alive can tell you for certain where it went. The theories have never stopped. Some say the prophet Jeremiah, warned of the coming destruction, hid it away in a cave in a mountain, sealed up to wait for a day still to come. Some say it was carried far to the south, long before, all the way to Ethiopia, and that it rests to this very hour in a guarded chapel in the city of Axum, watched over by a single monk who may never leave its side. Some say it lies still in a hidden chamber beneath the Temple Mount, a few meters under the most fought-over ground on the whole earth. And some say it was simply taken up, its work on earth finished. No expedition has ever found it. No museum has ever held it. For all our satellites and all our excavations, the most powerful object of the ancient world stepped quietly out of history and never came back. And perhaps that ending is the most fitting one of all. Because the fear that surrounded the ark was never really about the gold or the wood or even the objects sealed away inside it. It was about what the box stood for, a holiness so pure and so alive that it could not be handled, could not be used, could not be owned or dragged into a man's private battles or grabbed to keep it from falling. A God who would come close enough to live in a tent at the center of his people, and who was still far too great for any human hand to touch. Every man who forgot that died reaching for it. Everyone who remembered it and came near with a humble heart was blessed by the very same box. It toppled the gods of empires and blessed a quiet family on a hill. And then it did the one thing that keeps it burning in the imagination 3,000 years later. It vanished and left us all standing exactly where the men of Beth-shemesh once stood, asking the very same unanswered question: who is able to stand before this holy God? Long before David ever danced in front of the ark as a king, he was a boy that no one counted, the youngest son of a shepherd, with nothing in his hand but a sling and 5 smooth stones. And on a day when an entire army stood frozen in fear, that boy walked out alone to face a giant who had made grown soldiers tremble. That is the next film on this channel, and it is waiting for you now. David and Goliath, the boy who killed a giant. If you want to know what David saw that his whole army had missed, why the giant never stood a chance, and what really brought that giant down onto the ground, subscribe, and I will see you there.